Three.
Okay, welcome to the New York Enterprise Collaboration Meetup. This is remote, and I'm sure everyone appreciates that because everyone's working remote these days, not just in New York, but around the world. So here we've got a great presenter, Mark Vale, who's going to be talking about audio conferencing on the modern workplace. But before Mark kicks into his presentation, I just want to ask Mark.
Is it my end that's dropped? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry, Mark, is that good?
I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So welcome to, let me start again, take two. Welcome to the New York Enterprise Collaboration Meetup. What Mark Vale is speaking about audio conferencing in the modern workplace. But before Mark jumps into his presentation, it's always good to have a quick few icebreaker questions. So Mark, you're based in the UK. Whereabouts are you based?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm based in a town called Crewe, which is about 30 minutes or so outside Manchester, which is the nearest city. Been here now for 5 or 6 years. I was born and bred in North Wales, which is to the left of England as you look at it on the map.
All right, okay. What, near Anglesey?
Sort of central North Wales, so like by Rhyl. Everyone knows where Rhyl is.
Right, okay, very cool. And so how long have you been working with the Microsoft stack? Yeah, for many years.
Yeah, all my life really. Well, going back to starting with.
You're a Link man, are you?
Yeah, so started with Link when it came out in 2010. Before that, it was Microsoft Exchange. Before that, I server admin, so AD, file servers, all that type of stuff, desktop builds. Before that, I was a baker. I wasn't even IT until I was about 22, 23. So.
Okay. So what inspired you to go from the shift from baking bread to deployment of baking technology?
Well, always been interested in technology. Probably made some incorrect decisions when I was younger, which led me into a dead-end job or a job that I didn't really want to be. Reached a point in my life where I had to make a decision, so then I switched. I've been doing it ever since.
Well, I'm a big fan of Greg's bakery on the high street, I have to say. On that. All right, so just very quickly, if I was to ask, normally with the speakers, I ask them for a personal share about themselves. Is that your personal share that you used to be a baker in a previous life?
Yeah, that's one of my shares. The other share was that I used to be a private pilot, but don't have my license anymore. Family, kids, expensive, hobby, so I had to give it up.
Right, tough like that. All right, very cool. So people are joining the attendees. Okay, so for those people who have joined, on the top right hand corner, you do have a Q&A. Feel free to throw Q&As in there, and I will won't answer them immediately, but I will answer them at moments of pauses or at the very end of the presentation. So Mark, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So in this session, I've been asked to talk about audio conferencing in the modern workplace, but before we jump in, we've already done a bit of an introduction. So my name is Mark Vale. I work as an independent Microsoft Teams consultant. So I deploy Microsoft Teams, the UC element of Teams, so phone system, direct routing, meeting devices to enterprises and businesses from far-ranging parts of the world to the UK as well. I'm also the founder of Commsverse, which is a new Microsoft Teams independent conference in the UK. We were supposed to run our inaugural event in April, but coronavirus has sort the end of that one, so now we're into July. So hopefully we can do it then.
Disaster.
Yeah, if you're joining from the UK or you want to fly over, head over to commsverse.com to check it out. We are open for registration. We've got about 50 tickets left. We do
What's
actually
the date
have
of that, by the way?
6th and 7th of July. So appreciate you be flying on Independence weekend. But we do have representation from Microsoft in Seattle. So the Microsoft Teams product group will be flying over, and we do have quite a number of of American people coming over as attendees, sponsors and speakers too. So it's a truly international event. But anyway, audio conferencing. So on the agenda today, I'm going to touch on 3 points. We're going to look at audio conferencing in the modern workplace, what that means with Microsoft Teams, and then how you can migrate your conferencing services over to Microsoft Teams. So if we start with the modern workplace, now if we look at traditional ACP or audio conferencing, it was built for a business purpose that was maybe 15, 16 years old now. It was predominantly built for office-based workforces who had access to a phone. And the way that used to work was that you would buy a service from a provider and they would spin up a handful of virtual meeting rooms, as it were, that you would dial a specific number to enter, and you would then have to rent those rooms through Outlook meetings and what have you to run those audio conferences. And you would give those out on a phone-based purpose rather than user-based. And it's primarily for people who are desk-based or people who were fortunate enough to have mobile phones in those days. But business needs and collaboration in the modern world has moved on, and we can no longer just use that service in an island or as its own thing. And people want those meeting-rich experiences. So what we've seen over the last few years is that the audio conferencing piece has now been merged into unified comms. It's been merged into collaboration platforms like Teams, and it's become a sort of a bolt-on service rather than a service that you rely on to begin as a main thing. It has to also be available on multiple devices as well, so not just your desk phone. It has to be available on mobile phone or even your phones at home. So. And it has to be accessible anywhere because meetings take place at any place, any time these days. It's not just the meeting room or by your desk.
Right.
So modern meetings have changed they've changed the way business collaborates. So internet is cheap. It's a lot better than it was years ago. And that has seen a lot of uptake into cloud-based collaboration platforms where meetings now become a collaboration experience more so visually than just audibly. So people are going to video first meetings, and the situation we find ourselves in now globally is testament to that. People are piling on into Microsoft Teams. People or businesses who were adverse to cloud or adverse to remote working are now forced to look at these solutions to help their employees and their business continue through this crisis. So it's like a proof of concept that's now been proven, and video-based, content-rich meetings are going to be the meetings of the future. It also leads to the point that meeting rooms are no longer just rooms; they're spaces. So if you think about how often you've booked a meeting room or tried to book a meeting room in the past, and to find out that the only time you can get into that room is sometime next Wednesday, and you need a meeting this week, it proves problematic. And that was often seen as a blocker for collaboration and business process and what have you. So now people with their laptops and with these apps like Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, and all that type of things, we now look at meeting spaces whereby any space could be a potential meeting space. So that's corridors, pods, canteen, picnic benches outside, your kitchen, your home office, Starbucks. Everywhere is a meeting space. If you can find a little space, it's a valid meeting space, and we need those devices and those peripherals to be able to support those spaces as well. So meeting rooms are now not just rooms, and we also want to join those meetings from any device, not just corporate provided laptops or what have you. We're talking bring your own device, your own mobile phones, cell phones. Sorry, we've got to be able to join those experiences anywhere. And if you look at meetings that happen where people are joined just over the phone, those meetings are generally not productive because you look at them and well, you don't look at them, you speak in them, but you don't get that context, whether you're being understood by your peers. And the other thing as well is that you don't have people's attention. So there'll be people sitting on an audio call, will be busy working in Outlook. Somebody will ask a question, and how many times have you asked a question to someone and somebody's asked, can you repeat that? You know, they're not paying attention, and it can waste time on conferences. But if you bring that visual element in, then people are a bit more self-aware and they're more engaged by default as a result of that. And combined with, you know, Word Online, Excel Online, we can do live co-authoring, and actually that meeting can be really productive if everybody has joined over the web in full video mode. And audio only devices or audio only meetings, generally you waste about 15 minutes for every 40 minutes you spend on a conference, just taking up by repeating yourself or waiting for somebody to unmute themselves, or connection problems, redialing in, or what have you.
Is that still an issue now, though, Mark, or not? Or was that kind of like a couple of years ago? That was a bit of an issue. Is that still
an issue? What? Sorry.
About this endless. Can you say that again, please? Can you like that? This endless. I can't hear the bad connections. Is that still the case? I don't really witness that much these days.
I witness it quite a lot in the UK. I think we have this idea of multitasking, but we don't quite understand what multitasking is. It's sort of like, you know, people don't pay attention. It's more of an attention thing, from what I find. And then when people get called by name, they suddenly, their ears prick up, and all of a sudden they're on the spot. You know, they can. It's a habitual thing. It's nothing to do with the technology. But video, you know, if you made everybody use video, but if you promoted video first meetings, for instance, you'd get better engagement from all your attendees, because they've got that visual stimulus, and that self-awareness as well, that other people are watching. You know, and once they get over that, they can engage properly in a meeting.
Right. Do you think 5G is going to make a big difference?
I hope so. It all depends on coverage. In the UK, we've always been really poor at getting countrywide coverage at a decent level. It also depends whether the carriers, they limit the packet sizes and what have you, because I know even with 4G doing video, 4G is more than capable of doing video, of course, but if your cell provider is chopping the packets into smaller chunks than you need it, you're going to get some distortion. So maybe 5G will help, but we need the coverage there as well as the speed.
Yeah, good to know.
So I guess I've been bashing audio conferencing now for the last 5 or 6 minutes. So where does that leave it in the modern workplace? Is there still a use for it? Well, in my opinion, it's a second-class citizen now. In a meeting, people only use it when they really have to. But it is offered there as a service in those situations where you don't have decent internet coverage, or you don't have the ability to join a full Teams meeting when you could be driving, or you could be transiting on a train, and you just want to join without everybody else sort of hearing your conversation, what have you. So it still has a place in the modern meeting. It shouldn't be promoted as the primary tool of choice for those meetings. So it's a courtesy service as much as anything else in the majority of cases. So, but there are some cost-saving opportunities that you can achieve by going to more modern meetings, because all of a sudden you're now using bandwidth on your internet rather than using minutes over your phone lines. So if you can spend some time, effort, money driving adoption of modern meetings through your business, then you'll see a natural drop in audio conferencing usage. People will start to be joining conferences using Teams, which will be net free over the internet, and you will see that areas where you can start saving some money from what you were spending to begin with. So if you had a dedicated audio conferencing provider, the likelihood is you have a contract with them, which gives you really good preferential rates, but you have to agree to a minimum minute spend a month in your contract. And as you see that usage drop, you still end up paying the same. So you end up not saving any money. But if you move to Microsoft Teams with audio conferencing, you can start to exit those contracts when they come to expiration dates. But also, not only that, you don't have to provide audio conferencing for every single user in your business. You can run a what's called a persona over your users to find out if they actually need the service or not, and only provide that service to the people who actually need it. So you don't have to buy an audio conferencing license for every user in your business, just for the people who want it. You also don't have any. Sorry?
Very much a la carte these days.
Yeah, it's built to scale. So if you think about the situation now, if you have a business, 10,000 employees, but you were paying for 2,000 audio conferencing licenses, all of a sudden everyone's remote. You can call Microsoft up, say I need 10,000 audio conferencing licenses for my business. They can, provision that for you. You assign it to everybody. Everybody can crack on with their meetings. And then when you get back to normal after coronavirus has gone away, hopefully, and people start coming back to the office, you can spin down those licenses because you only pay it on a month-by-month basis. So you can scale up or down depending on your demand.
Yep.
So that kind of leads me on to audio conferencing with actual Microsoft Teams. So a bit of an overview. The audio conferencing enriches a Microsoft Teams meeting. So in order to take advantage of this, you need to have a Microsoft Teams meeting. Probably not talk about Skype for Business Online, since that's getting retired next year. And any tenants that are 500 seats or less are already Teams only by default. So yeah, so we just talk about Teams. It's a cloud-only service, as we talked about. It's a flexible licensing option, so you can assign it on a per user, per month basis. And it's when you have the meeting invite generated, the meeting organizer must have the audio conferencing license. So if you join a meeting and you have an audio conferencing license, but you're just a participant, you can't use that license in that meeting. It has to be the organizer. It has local toll numbers in over 100 countries by default. So if you assign a audio conferencing license to a user, they will get the preferential number, or the preferred number, to be the shared number in their country based on their license usage location in Office 365. You can override that, but it requires PowerShell for you to change the default number, or through the Teams admin center. For countries that Microsoft don't support local numbers, you can purchase toll-free numbers. I think there are only a handful of countries where Microsoft don't actually have a solution, but they're so far on the edges of the map that hardly anybody really in the Western world, at least, is going to have a problem with that.
You say North Korea is not a big Teams tenant user?
I'm sure they would be if Microsoft were allowed to sell to them. But they probably have some Russian service, I guess. So licensing then, like we said before, it's a bit of an a la carte service. You can mix and match. It's a bit of a myth that you buy one license for all your users. You can, for the ease of simplicity, but that's not the most cost-effective solution. So what a lot of businesses are doing now is rationalizing licenses and looking at what their users are using, and then delicensing or choosing the appropriate base license for their needs. But if you have users with Office 365 E5, then you get audio conferencing included. But if you have E1 or E3, you can add audio conferencing as an add-on license. It's about $3.50 retail, I think. Or you can go pay as you go. So you don't have to sign up to a monthly subscription. You can simply put some money into your tenant using communication credits, and and get the pay-as-you-go licensing for audio conferencing, that's only available through your LSP, so your licensing service provider. You can't buy that through the Microsoft licensing store. If you have users with F1 licenses, which are your frontline workers, you can't use audio conferencing with that license. So the minimum entry point is E1.
All right.
So there are some limits with this service. So if you have a license, then it's a monthly subscription, then it's all you can eat dial-in minutes for your meetings. So that means you can have as many meetings as you want, as many participants as your meeting can support, which is currently 250 per meeting, and everybody can use that service for as long as you want every month. With pay-as-you-go licensing, that's not the case. So you pay for every inbound minute out of your communication credits. That's just one difference. Sometimes it can work out cheaper for a business to do pay-as-you-go licensing versus paying a subscription. So it depends if you've got the data to support your calculations to whether pay-as-you-go is a good option for you. Each license also has 60 minutes per month for dial-out minutes. And what that means is that with dial-in conferencing, we have this other technology or other way called dial-out conferencing. And what that means is that when you're in a conference and you need to transfer your audio to maybe your cell phone because you need to shut down your laptop because the building's closing down or what have you, you can then transfer your audio to your mobile device using your cell phone number and continue that meeting as an audio participant or organizer. Similarly, if you have a meeting and you need to drag someone in, you can use the dial pad to dial a PSTN number to invite them into a meeting. So that's dial-out conferencing. So every license, subscription license gives you 60 minutes per month, and that's pooled at the tenant level. So what we mean by that is that if you have 10 audio conferencing licenses, you have 600 minutes of outbound minutes you can use for those purposes, and that can be shared equally or disproportionately across those 10 users. So if user 1 only uses 5 minutes a month and user 2 uses 70 minutes a month, you're covered. For toll-free numbers, dial-in access using toll-free numbers is not covered in the subscription minutes of any plan. So you need communication credits for that, which is a separate license. And basically that's a basically prepaid wallet that you load into Microsoft and say, here's $1,000, please charge me in advance or charge me per sec. I think it's per quarter second billing, if my memory serves me right. But really, is toll-free really necessary in modern, in developed countries? Because most people have unlimited calling plans these days with their mobile device. It's a cheap service for an audio call these days. So providing a toll-free access number into your meetings generally now it's a nice to have if you really want to pay for people to dial into your conference. It's the only solution if your participants are going to be in a country that Microsoft don't have any local numbers in. But it may be cheaper for your participant to dial a international number at a neighboring country than it will be for you to offer a toll-free service in that country. So it's just one thing to bear in mind. I don't see very many people taking toll-free options these days with Microsoft Teams audio conferencing.
Why is that then?
Simply because minute plans on cell phones are just unlimited these days. It's no longer a concern. People don't think of it as a cost to them because they're not paying per minute.
It's like water. It's all free basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, my cell phone contract now is unlimited minutes. There's no fair use policy. I can do 1 million minutes a month and I'll still pay the same amount a month whether I use 1 million minutes or whether I use 10 minutes. So people don't really turn that into a monetary value anymore. If they had a pay-as-you-go phone contract, then they'd be a bit more conscious about it.
True.
Service, I can't see the title. Service defaults. Okay, so by default, the local number given to your organizer is based on their country location, as we said in the earlier. It is a shared number, so other businesses will be using the same dialing number, but obviously the meeting conference ID will be different, which is but there are some limitations to a shared number in that it can only have, I think, 250 call setups in a second. And if 251 happen, if one person gets a cancel, they have to dial in again. You can choose to assign your own number, so you have a dedicated number. So you can either acquire those directly from Microsoft, or you can port your own service numbers into your tenant and use them. And then you get 250 people per second on that number just for you, rather than sharing it with other people who are using it in the same country. Dialing conferencing as well is not supported for live events, as we're doing now, even though technically you can do it, it's not supported. So it's really just standard Teams meetings where dialing conferencing it should be used. I touched on this again. You can bring your own number. Generally, it has to be a service number, and it should be portable from your existing service provider. If that's the case, then you can fill out a letter of authorization with Microsoft and move that number into the tenant. You can only port those numbers if Microsoft support calling plans in that region. So for the US, UK, that's not a problem. Some of Europe's not a problem, but if you have somewhere a site in the UAE or APAC or wherever, then you're not going to be able to port those numbers across. You can't use direct routing just yet as dialing conferencing endpoint. So if you're thinking about direct routing as a voice solution, and you think that you've got Skype for Business today, and you've got your own dialing conferencing number for that service, you can't port that across over to Microsoft. You can port the number, but it has to go to the Microsoft tenant. You can't just redirect it through your SBC. Yes, skipping that slide because I'm going to be repeating myself because I've already covered it in another one. That's what you get for not practicing before.
Here's a question for you. This came up in terms of recording the conferences. Someone asked this question. Yep. My understanding, when you record it, the recording that gets saved in like the Teams tenant into Stream. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So okay. It goes into the organizer's personal Stream account. Yes. If they're licensed. So by default, self-service licensing is turned on to a tenant. So if a user isn't licensed for Stream and they click record in Teams, Microsoft will go ahead and assign the person a Stream license as part of their e-license, for instance, and provision their Stream account in the back end and store that recording there. You will get a notification as a dial-in person that the meeting's being recorded, so you'll get an automated voice coming saying this meeting's being recorded and this meeting's no longer being recorded, so you do know that it's going to happen. But yes, it's stored into the user Stream account. Incidentally, anybody who's external, so that's anonymous or federated, can't view that recording. They can see it in the Teams client, but when they click on play, it just says you don't have access to this file. So even when you do get access to the recording, the organizer will have to basically download it and share it via OneDrive at the moment.
Right, but because that was part one of the question. Part two of that question was, what happens if you're doing a recording with someone outside the organization? Because the video is in your Stream and that can't be shared anonymous to people outside your organization.
Yeah, exactly. So what I've done when I've done these types of meetings, because as part of doing my conference, I'll have vendor meetings and what have you, and they typically say, are you recording it, so I can view it back. Right now, it's a bit of a disjointed experience because I have to wait for the recording to render in Stream. I then have to go to Stream and download the video. I have to copy it to my OneDrive, wait for that to upload from my PC, and then share it out my OneDrive to the participants. I do believe that anonymous sharing is coming to Stream at some point. I don't know when, but it's definitely a feature that's needed to make it more seamless.
Right. Yeah, that was just one of the questions. There's a few more questions, but which I'll get to at the end.
Okay. It kind of comes on to the last section, so migrating your users across. Some straight up no's that can't be done. So if you have an existing if you can't use Microsoft ACP services as bolt-on to any other third-party platform. So if you've got a Cisco, a Via platform, and you want to use Microsoft audio conferencing for those meetings, you can't. It's only available in Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business Online. You can't use it as a replacement to Skype for Business on premises audio dialing conferencing. So you can't have Microsoft take over dialing capabilities for Skype for Business on-prem meetings. They have to be online. You can't use on-prem PSTN connectivity for audio conferencing, as we just said. There's rumors that it's going to happen, but we don't know until it does, or if it does. And you can't bring your own audio conferencing provider to Microsoft Teams. So if you have an account with, let's say, BT Meet Me or PGI or what have you, and you want to bring that over to Teams, you can't. You used to be able to, but Microsoft stopped that. So if you want audio conferencing in Microsoft Teams, you have to use the Microsoft service. So
another question that's came up is that when people join the meeting, you always have to wait in the lobby. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to avoid that? I thought that was, is that a global setting?
No,
I believe it.
There's two. There's two settings. So there's a meeting policy. So your admin will set a meeting policy which will set your default experience. Now, depending on what they've set, they could say allow everyone to bypass the lobby as a standard meeting policy. Yeah. Typically, what they do is they don't want it to happen, so they'll say everybody in company. So everybody inside your tenant will be able to, or inside your business on your domain will be able to join the meeting without going to the lobby. But anybody external or anonymous will have to sit in the lobby. You do have a link in your Teams meeting called Meeting Options, which if you click it, and it'll take you to a website where you can actually turn that off on a per meeting basis. So if you have you're going to have a meeting and you just want people to join, let's say you're going to be on the road and you don't want to use DTMF tones to admit people, you can click on the meeting options for that meeting and then turn it off. You can just say admit everyone. So the power is still to the user. It's just a setting that's not very well known. Right. But you can turn the lobby off on a per user basis. Right.
And of course, the most exciting question I've got so far is it possible to have a green screen background behind you with moving action without the green screen?
That's a bit of a Zoom feature, isn't it? Zoom require green screen. There is a way to do it with a third party.
I've done it with third party software. There's third party software, but you need a green screen.
Yeah. I'd say the video technology is not there yet to be able to recognize the background. We've obviously got background blur. We've got custom backgrounds now coming out in Teams, which is just to replace your background with an image. So you can upload your own image or choose one of the default ones. So you can be in the Bahamas if you want to be.
Is that out yet, or is that coming?
I think it's rolling out.
Yeah, so, that's what from the blog post I read.
So it'll be a matter of time for people to ask for a moving background, but then you have to question yourself whether that's going to be distracting to the point of the meeting and yourself. So people be paying more attention to what's happening, in the background, and people or virtual people jumping over your shoulder or whatever it might be. Yes, then actually what's going on.
Well, you could say that's what they said about emojis in chat channels.
Yeah. But I think the background replacement is just it's a stopgap in my opinion. What we're going to see in the next 5 or 6 years is going to be a shift into sort of virtual reality meetings, and we're going to get into that point where you'll get that immersive experience. You'll get that full 3D experience, and
it's gonna be some kind of a fantasy land thing, is it? Like where I'll be talking to like somebody, a talking horse or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a project at the moment, a bit of a virtual one for Commsverse, where we're going to do a VR conference, and it's, you know, it's not quite ready for mainstream. It does work with Teams in the desktop sharing way, interestingly, but I think VR conferences are going to be, or VR meetings are going to be the next thing, because it goes back to my point before with audio conferencing, where people aren't paying attention, and all of a sudden, once you put them into that virtual space, you know, they become immersed into that world, and you've got their attention. And I think that's basically where meetings are going to go, but, you know, not for a few years yet.
Windows 15, perhaps.
Windows 10 build 16,000,006 or something.
All right.
Okay, so there's support scenarios where audio conferencing or dining conferencing is supported in Microsoft Teams. A user must be in either Teams only mode or Teams with Teams collab and meetings mode or islands mode. If the user is in Skype for Business only mode, then audio conferencing will be in Skype, and they shouldn't be using Teams meetings in that mode. For audio conferencing to be licensed, you have to have a qualifying license. So if you're using Azure AD groups for licensing, you can't just add an audio conferencing license to a group. You have to also add the qualifying E1, E3 license, etc. This is the last slide. So when you migrate your meetings across from Skype for Business, what will happen is when you put a user into Skype for Business with Teams collab and Teams meetings in mouthful mode, or Teams only, there's a cloud migration service that will kick in to change all your existing or future invites that were Skype for Business meetings into Teams meetings, and we'll send out new invitations to all those participants of that meeting with the Teams dial-in details. This service kicks in around about 90 minutes after you've moved a user into one of those modes, and that's just a throttling feature of Microsoft. So it's a documented, they say we'll just stick it in a queue for 90 minutes and do nothing with it, and then do something with it after 90 minutes. If you don't see it happening, then you can run it in PowerShell manually using the start CX meeting migration commandlet.
Someone's asked, is there a limit to the amount of people you can have in a meeting?
Yes, 250 is the limit. It's a hard limit as well. So it was the same limit in Skype for Business on-prem, 250, but that was just an advised limit. Right. It was never enforced. But with Teams, it is a hard limit. When it gets to 250, you can't add another person in to that meeting. At that point, You're going into a live event.
Okay, so another question here from Pavel. It says audio conferencing still will be way more popular than video conferencing in the UK. What percentage of meetings are video first compared with audio conferencing? Here in Canada, audio conferencing is predominant. PPL are just not there yet.
Yeah, it's one of those people are scared of people viewing oneself, but it's a habitual thing. I don't have any statistics, but we see more and more people start to promote video first meetings. Now, it will take time for people to get over the notion of having a camera on. It's an adoption piece. It needs to be dealt with in a situation that is inclusive and not a case of a turn your video on, please type of dictatorial approach. But it's a learned behavior, and it's going to take time for that behavior to change. And I think, to be honest, that's only going to change with generations. So we get like Generation Z, is it, or something now, coming into the workplace. They're going to be wanting to do video first because they're comfortable with FaceTime and Snapchat and all that type of stuff. Whereas, we've got the boomers and, some of the millennials as well, where I sit, where are more sort of, they're a little bit with the technology, but they're still a bit sort of adverse to it. So a lot of it's going to be waiting for a generational shift to happen. Some of it's going to be adoption. Quite right that audio conferencing is going nowhere, but with Teams you can join without your video. It's not technically an audio conference at that point. It's still a Teams meeting, and you still have that ability to see desktop sharing and PowerPoints and all that type of stuff. Will we see people actually stop dialing phone numbers into a conference? Yeah, that's coming down dramatically at the moment.
So is one of your jobs doing like migrations, people from GoToMeeting into Teams?
Generally, for the last couple of years, really, it's been getting people from on-prem Skype for Business into Teams, really. We see people, I wouldn't say GoToMeeting, we see people coming from WebEx, really. That's
right, because what I was quite surprised, is it's become quite a crowded space. Like you got Join Me, Zoom came in, and like our office, Soho Dragon, is right next to the New York stock market, and they did an IPO a few years ago, and I was a bit surprised, thinking, wow, they came from nowhere. I would have thought WebEx and Microsoft and GoToMeeting would have owned this space. And Zoom, how come Zoom was so successful in storming this this landscape?
So agile companies, really, is long and short of it. Agile companies. So if you can get a product that to market quickly, then you got a chance of taking that market off people. It pains me to say, but Microsoft always seemed to miss the boat. So we saw it with the Windows Phone and Steve Ballmer, laughing at the iPhone, and look what happened there. Big companies take time to change, and what you got to look at, Microsoft has been transforming themselves from basically a software company who were comfortable releasing updates every 3 months for on-prem, to now going into a services-based company where it's all cloud and developed, almost in band. Zoom made it really easy for people to use their service. They gave it away. So if you give something away for free, they're going to use it. They also made it really easy to use. So they really sort of looked at it from a consumer perspective and said, right, if we can make it easy to use, people will use it. And then CEOs and senior execs got in there, and that's why it takes it by storm, because
history.
Everything comes down from the top, right? So if a CEO likes Zoom, they'll push it down into the business, say, right, IT, we need to have this in it, this supported, and this, everyone needs to have this. Is it necessarily the right choice? It really depends. I'm an advocate for companies choosing the right technology that fits their model and what's right for them. I'm not going to force Microsoft down their throats just because that's what I do. If there's been times where I sat in a business meeting and said, you know what, Cisco's the best solution for you, and that's the way it is. But what we see is, businesses are invested in Microsoft, from OS to servers to Office 365, and it's about getting the best value out of what they're already spending. And they're already paying for, if they're already paying for an E3, they're already paying for Teams. So why pay a Zoom subscription? Sometimes if you can do it in Teams and you can do it without spending any more cash on subscriptions, then is it that bad to use, to take a hit on maybe a small bit of user experience versus going to another product?
Yeah, we've done a few Teams workshops, and the migrations have been from Join Me, which I believe is owned by GoToMeeting or Citrix.
Log Me In, isn't it, or something?
Okay, Log Me In, okay. And there's another company called Blue Gene.
Yeah.
Okay, which I've never heard of, and I know that, but it was the standard thing. Well, hang on, we're paying for this in Microsoft already. It's integrated everything. It seems like a no-brainer, and it was a no-brainer. brainer. You know, there's always a little bit of resistance because, needless to say, people don't necessarily like change.
No, so that's the biggest problem with any IT product is change and how to handle that.
Okay, Mark, it's up on the hour. Any final wrap-up points?
I think I've touched on everything really. You know, the key thing to remember is to do your maths and do your calculations to see if it works out to pay for a subscription on a monthly basis on a user, or whether you go to pay-as-you-go. It takes a bit of time to work that out, but if you can spend the time, you can potentially save quite a bit of money and still use the same type of service. So that's really all I've got to say on audio conferencing and meetings. So
one thing, and that's someone saying that the Zoom privacy policies are terrible. How are the privacy policies in Teams?
Privacy policies in terms of what, data retention compliance?
Well, in terms of like the data's in Office 365. Okay, so I'm assuming it's all in the tenant. So it's basically where your tenant is located relates to where the privacy is.
Yes. So right now there isn't multi-geo for Teams data. It's stored in your home tenant. Everything is pretty much encrypted. You have retention policies. You have compliance center. You can search for content. You know, you've got the recordings that are stored in Stream. They're now you can have retention policies come into Stream. They're also doing transcription in recordings as well, so you'll be able to search on transcription as well. So it'll be a text-based search against a video recording. Conversations going on in meetings are all extractable out of Compliance Center. You can set retention on that, you know, from default of, I think it's 30 days to however long you want. Right.
Okay. And the final question is that you mentioned the conference earlier. How much are the tickets?
The £49 to turn up.
Okay.
We don't make any money out of it. It's a community conference, so everything that we take in terms of revenues goes towards putting the event on.
Okay.
You know, so we're not expensive at all.
All right, and for our final plug, and the name of the conference is
Commsverse.
Okay, and it's at the Mercedes-Benz headquarters in Surrey. Yep. Okay, Mark, thank you very much for your time. Very informative. Good questions as well from the panel. So everyone, enjoy your day, and thank you, Mark, for the information on the presentation.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a great day.
Pleasure. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.